Hello. First off, she's had the chop. She's got back from the hairdresser this morning and I said to her, I want you to chop it off. And she did. And I love it. And I thought, you know what? I need to make the most of a fresh haircut. You know, when it's really soft and you just want to keep running your hands through it because it feels like there's nothing there. It's so light. I need to make the most of it. So I thought, hey, let's film a YouTube video. On my schedule, because I've created a YouTube schedule for the next 4 months of everything that I'm going to be posting every week for the next 4 months so that I have purpose and focus with every video. On my schedule for this week was my fitness journey, talking you through how I got here, how I got to a point of becoming an online coach and a business owner of an online coaching business, and also talking through things I would do differently if I had my time again. So this is going to be a bit of a sit down chatty video. So let's get stuck in. So until the age of 18, I had never stepped foot in a gym. I tend to find that people who come into the fitness world, the professional fitness world, come from one of two backgrounds. One, they have been sporty their entire life since they came out of the womb. They did 17 different sports when they were at school and they've always been wanting to do something within the sports realm. Two, they'd never stepped foot into the gym before they turned 18, 20, 25. I am in the latter camp. I had never... My school gym doesn't count because it was 90% cardio machines and then a rack of dumbbells that I think went up to about 8 kilograms. So that doesn't count. I hadn't been into a proper gym till I was 18 and that was when I went to uni. And a couple of things exercise-wise that stand out to me in my memory from when I was younger was, I think I was maybe in year 8 and we had to do a cardio test where we had to run, I think it was 4 laps of the main school field. And thinking back, it must not have been anything more than maybe about 600 meters in total, maybe not even that, maybe 500 meters per lap, so 2-kilometer test. I remember doing that and feeling like I was about to pass out within the first 250 meters. My endurance and my aerobic abilities were shot to pieces within the first couple of minutes. And then another standout memory where sport was concerned at school was when we got to 6th form, we were allowed to decide what sport or activity we could do for our 2-hour PE stint once every other week. And one of those options was going bowling. So leaving school, going into the middle of town and going to the local bowling centre. And as you can imagine, barely any bowling got done. We were playing on the arcade games. We were gossiping away over a Diet Coke at the bar. Very minimal bowling got done. That was the sort of extent of my exercise regime when I was at school, apart from my dance classes, which I did. I went to dance for about 4 hours a week from about the age of 11 onwards. But the thing with my dance school is that we were very hot on spending the first 20 minutes of every dance class gossiping, catching up, talking about next to nothing. And then we'd only really get 40 minutes of dancing per class. And even then, it wasn't to the extent that I was going to gain massive amounts of fitness from. So yeah, until I was 18, I was not a fit person. I didn't enjoy exercise. I never, ever, ever considered myself to be somebody who in the future would be in the fitness world as a professional. And it wasn't until I got to uni that I decided, oh shit, I need to sort this out. Because I went to university to study professional dance and musical theatre at a place called Bird College in London. And I got there on my first day in my foundation year. I got through my first 6 hours of back-to-back dance classes. And I very, very swiftly came to the realisation that I needed to sort my shit out and get fitter. Otherwise, I would not last the week, never mind the year, never mind the next 4 years. So that was the day I signed up and joined my very first gym, which was the campus gym. And it was a very small gym. It had 5 treadmills, a couple of other cardio machines, a few weight machines, a squat rack, and then a big mat stretching area and some dumbbells. So I wasn't exactly thrust into a, muscle works type situation. It was a very gentle introduction to the gym. And for the first few months of joining, I would spend all my time on the treadmill or cardio machines and then stretching on the mats, because that's all I had the confidence and knowledge to do. I then decided to I bought the GraceFitUK. Hopefully the demographic I'm aiming these videos towards will understand that reference. I downloaded and bought the 8-week GraceFitUK booty builder guide, something along those lines. I've deleted it, so I can't remember exactly what the title was, but it was something along those lines of an 8-week PDF workout guide specifically developed around the glutes. And that was my first introduction to resistance training in any capacity, in any format. And that was a few months after I'd joined the gym, a few months after I'd moved to uni. And during this time, I was going through a big transition phase where food was concerned as well. Because when I left to go to dance uni and study dance and musical theatre, I was told by all of my family, by teachers at school, that I would have to really focus on my energy intake and my calorie intake, because I was going to be burning off so many calories during the day when I was going to be doing training, hours and hours of dance training. I was told I have to eat as much as possible in order to maintain my energy output. So I started eating more, using that advice as a guise to eat more, snack more, eat more unhealthily. I obviously drifted into the classic trend that always tends to happen when somebody first goes to uni of, receiving their student loan and buying takeaways every weekend because they could afford it, because they had money in their bank, snacking through the day, eating more than was necessary most days. Again, under this guise of, or this pretense of, I'm dancing all day, every day, so I need to eat buckets and buckets of food. That, coupled with weekends spent drinking and living the classic uni lifestyle, meant that I gained quite a lot of weight quite quickly. Within about 6 months, I was the heaviest I'd ever been. And considering I was spending my entire day, every day, standing in front of a mirror in a very tight leotard, surrounded by girls my age that were mostly thinner and slimmer than me, I became very aware of that weight gain very, very, very quickly. And then during the first Easter break of my first year at uni, I went through my first proper breakup, and it really sucked. I had a few weeks of incredibly intense, high, negative emotions towards myself, towards my body, towards anything that I could potentially blame for that breakup, even though the blame was just centered around the fact that we were living 4 hours apart at 2 different unis and we didn't like each other enough to put up with that. I came back to uni after the Easter break and realised or decided that something needed to change. And I needed to take back control over my body. And the only way I knew how to do that was through cardio, because that's all we'd ever learned. That's all I'd ever learnt up until that point in my life, was if you wanted to lose weight, you had to do more cardio. So I got back from Easter break and decided to pick up daily running. I would go out for a run every morning before I then went into 8 hours of dancing. I then, as a result of picking up running, also somehow stumbled across MyFitnessPal and the concept of tracking your calories. And my approach to using MyFitnessPal was for MyFitnessPal to give me a set of targets to aim for. And then my goal was to come in as far under those targets as I could manage each day. Because I thought, well, if MyFitnessPal is telling me that I need these amount of calories to lose weight, then if I eat even less than that, I'll lose even more weight, which, as you can imagine, all led down a very dodgy path. The accumulation of the running and the MyFitnessPal and the tracking all led down a very dodgy path. I lost a lot of weight pretty quickly, as you could probably imagine, and I started receiving a lot of compliments and external validation as a result. I started to take my fitness more seriously at that point. I redid the GraceFitUK strength guide and then started copying some of the workouts that the up-and-coming fitness influencers of 10 years ago were starting to promote on their Instagram. And then I got a weekend job at a local gym on their front of house. And as a result of that, I started to dip my toes into the big boy areas, the squat rack and the Smith machines, some of the more intimidating pieces of kit. And when I started my second year of uni, which was then my third year of uni, because I'd already done foundation, I started thinking about what my muggle job would be once I'd graduated. So when you are in the performing industry, unless you are ridiculously lucky and or talented, you will go long periods of time in between contracts where you are not performing. And you have to have a job in that interim period to pay your bills. And everybody called it a muggle job. And I started thinking about what I wanted or what I would feel excited about doing as a muggle job, because I knew that I didn't want to go into hospitality work. I was doing hospitality work alongside my gym job at that point as well. I was working at Wembley Stadium. I was doing silver spoon service at the Marriott hotels. I was working at Twickenham. And I knew that I didn't want to be doing that full time once I'd left uni. So I thought about what fitness could look like as a muggle job, which then led me down the path of getting my level 2 fitness instructor qualification so that I was then able to lead fitness classes. And then when I hit third year, I realized how much I was enjoying the gym. My focus started to move away from just being skinnier and losing weight, and it started to focus more towards feeling stronger, getting fitter. And there were also people a few years above me at college who had moved into fitness full time after leaving college, who seemed to be really enjoying themselves. So I then got my level 3 and 4 PT qualifications, which allows you to work face-to-face or one-on-one with clients. I got that during my third year, which was not the best idea. It was very much a year of survival, not thrival. But as a result of that, I started working with some friends, some family members to help them build a bit more of a routine within their fitness. Very, very basic level, but it got the ball rolling in terms of my experience with one-on-one clients. And then COVID hit. So I finished uni, or the March of my third year of uni, COVID hit, and we were all resigned to obviously garden workouts and runs. And a couple of months into COVID, when the restrictions lifted a little bit, I started training neighbours in my mother-in-law's back garden, because I was living with my partner and his mum for all of COVID, because I wanted to keep getting this hands-on experience with one-on-one clients. And then when the gyms reopened, I managed to nab myself a job as a fitness instructor and PT at a newly opened boutique gym studio in central London. And that was my first proper experience of a job in the fitness industry. And my God, was that experience a baptism of fire. I loved working with the members. I actually still work with a couple of the members that I started working with at that boutique studio. I still work with them now, 5 years on, which is incredible. 6 years on. But I very, very quickly came to realize that I was not built for the high energy, high intense lifestyle of a fitness instructor. I was not built to teach 6 spin classes in a day. I was not built for the 4 a.m. wake-ups that were required when I was on the opening shift. I would have to wake up at 4 a.m, get the 4:21 a.m. first train out of Beckenham Junction station that would get me to the gym for 6 a.m. I'd have to get the first tube that came out of Victoria Station, and I'd get to work to open at 6 a.m. I wasn't built for that life, and I very quickly came to realise that. That, as well as the very quick, very soul-sucking realisation that being a PT in central London meant you were basically signing 90% of your monthly income away to rent and overheads. So after about 9 months, I found a gym closer to home, much closer to home, about a 20-minute walk from home, where the overhead rent prices weren't quite as astronomical, not quite as eye-watering. I moved over to work as a private one-on-one PT full-time. Looking back, this was actually a really scary jump because I'd built up a pretty strong client base relatively quickly. By the way, it's worth noting that for the few months between moving away from the fitness instructor work and into one-on-one PT, I started to have a bit of a hybrid approach where I would go and work at the gym, and I would work with my own face-to-face clients on my days off or time around my shift. So I was already building a bit of a hybrid, a bit of a bridge between the two. But even so, when I moved fully one-on-one, face-to-face private work, that was a ballsy jump on my part. Going from employed to self-employed within 9 months of starting my career in fitness, within 9 months of leaving university, 9 months into a pandemic, it was a very ballsy decision on my part. But I am a hardcore jump and see where I land kind of person, because those moments have always led me down the right path, even if in the moment it seemed like the stupidest decision ever. So by this point, I was fully private one-on-one face-to-face PT on the gym floor. And it was at this point that I started working with my first ever online coach, having my first online coaching experience as the client. Because I'd realized that since going fully private or fully remote, I'd let my own training fall completely to the wayside. I very quickly realized how much I would benefit from some accountability that would come from paying a coach. And I knew that I wanted to continue walking the walk alongside my clients who I was training, who, were putting the work in on their end. I knew I needed to be doing the same. And then that process of working with an online coach myself, going through that experience, hit me slap in the face with the realization of how effective the online coaching process can be for the right person. AKA, for me at that point in my journey, I didn't need a face-to-face PT to tell me how to squat. I didn't need a face-to-face PT to tell me how to do a deadlift, but I did need somebody telling me to go to the gym, or to make my session work within my schedule for the day, or to prioritize my training when I could otherwise prioritize clients. And I gradually started getting more and more confident in my abilities as a PT. I got my nutrition coaching qualifications in that time as well. So I got a better understanding of nutrition and how to manipulate diet around certain aesthetic goals. I started working on my own aesthetic goals, doing a little bit of fat loss, focusing on more muscle growth, more specific muscle growth and muscle development, rather than just training for the sake of training and training for the sake of ticking a box. And also within that time, I gradually started trickling into the online coaching world. I started picking up a couple of online coaching clients, and really they were the guinea pigs for me to understand exactly how I wanted to work with people online, what my ethos was, what my messaging was, what my service looked like, and the kind of service I wanted to provide. So I got into a position where I was doing a bit of 50-50, a bit of face-to-face, a bit of online. And during that hybrid period, I realized how much more I enjoyed working with my online clients than I did my face-to-face. And the main reason being was, for the most part, my face-to-face clients were there as a source of accountability, so that they could say they'd been to the gym that day. They were working with me to earn their glass of wine in the evening. The people who were working with me online had much more long-term, dedicated, focused goals. They were in it to change their lifestyle, to change their relationship with themselves, their relationship with exercise, their relationship with their body, their relationship with food. And I realized that I was getting much better quality results at a much quicker pace with the online clients than I was face-to-face, because with the face-to-face clients, I was seeing them once or twice a week at a push. Sometimes not even that if they were on holiday for a week, and I was getting 60 minutes with them per week. There's not a lot that you can teach somebody in the space of 60 minutes whilst also giving them a decent PT session. So I was getting really frustrated and wanting to put more energy into the online world than I was giving my face-to-face clients. So after a year and a half of working with clients face-to-face with that hybrid into the online coaching world, I came to a very sure realization that I didn't want to do face-to-face work anymore. I wanted to go all in on the online coaching world. It was also at this time that I was having a lot of doubts about my performing work, because if you remember, I trained in musical theatre. I'd got a performing agent, I was getting auditions coming through, I was doing some television bits, I was getting to final rounds of productions like UK tours. I was getting some good opportunities come my way, or almost getting some good opportunities come my way for the most part. And there was one audition that came through. I actually now can't remember what the show was, but there was an audition that came through that when I got it through, I said 2 years ago, this would have been my dream opportunity. And my first thought was, I don't want to leave my PT work. I don't want to leave my clients. I don't want to leave the fitness world. And that was the moment that I realized I needed to leave the performing world. I needed to leave my agent, and I needed to shut the door on the performing world and go all in on the online coaching world. So I did. I left my performing agent. I gently and gradually started either suggesting my face-to-face clients come online, or finding them alternative services if they weren't up for going online. And then I was fully online by the end of 2022. And that's when the fun started. And that's when I started developing Strength 360 to where it is now. So that's kind of it in a nutshell as to how I got into the fitness industry, how I got to this point, and the whys behind it all. What I wish I'd done differently. Now that you know the backstory, I'm going to talk through the bits and pieces that I wish I'd done differently. And I'm a big believer in fate, in everything happens for a reason. I'm a very, very, very big believer in that concept. As a result, there's not a whole lot that I would have done differently, as wanky as that sounds. But there are a few things that if I could go back and tell little Ellen what to adjust, what to do slightly differently. My first and the biggest piece of advice I would give her is don't take advice from a fucking fitness influencer. Work with someone more reputable, someone with qualifications, someone who isn't just out there for your money. Because had I done that, I probably wouldn't have gone down the pretty dodgy and unfortunate road that led to my relationship with MyFitnessPal and tracking and running before uni, and the tough place I got into during that process. I would have hopefully avoided at least some of that experience had I found a more reputable option. Had I known how influential the hiring of a coach was going to be, I would have done it sooner if I could, or if I knew that that was an option, or if I knew of, if I, could understand just how much influence that process would have on my life, I would have started it sooner. And I know I have to say this because it's my job and it's my business, but ultimately there is nothing better that you could do for yourself if it's financially viable at the start of your fitness journey, or when you feel like you are clutching at straws and not getting anywhere with your fitness journey, is to hire a coach. And if you do want any information about what we offer within Strength 360, then drop me a DM. My link to Instagram is in the notes bit at the bottom of the video. I can't remember what that's called, the description box down there. Because ultimately that is the biggest piece of advice I would give anybody starting their fitness journey, especially little Ellen, because she would have really, really benefited from it so much more than she could ever know. And then I think the only other thing I'd have done differently, and this is actually quite a recent one that, a few years ago, I wish I'd been a bit more ballsy with my fitness goals. I think I held myself back quite a lot because I was worried about failure. I was worried about not living up to my own expectations. And as a result, I didn't challenge myself enough with my own fitness as early as I probably could have done. I wish I'd signed up for more races or set myself more ballsy goals for the races that I was signing up for. I wish I'd put myself in a position of discomfort more frequently where my own fitness was concerned. But other than that, everything that happened led me to this point. I wouldn't change where I am for the world. I wouldn't change the business that I've developed, the people within that business, and the experiences that have allowed me to get to this point. And I wouldn't change, what my future looks like for anything either. But it is mad to think that everything that led to this point, that could have been a very, very different outcome. It's like that butterfly effect, isn't it? If you tread on a ladybird today, that could impact your future in 10 years' time. It is always very weird to think about, but yeah, not a whole lot I'd change other than gain a bit more guidance from a reputable source earlier on to avoid quite as much sadness and frustration as little Ellen unfortunately had to go through. Cool. I'm going to leave it there. But I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you gained some value from the video. Please drop me a comment if that is the case. Drop me a follow if you want, if you like. Drop it a like if you like. And stay tuned for next week, because next week is going to be, according to my YouTube schedule, next week's video is going to be a pretty good one. I'll leave it there. See you later.